Mayor Lydia Lavelle,
Present.
Councilmember and Mayor Pro Tem Barbara Foushee,
Present.
Councilmember Jacqueline Gist, Councilmember Randy Haven O'Donnell,
Present.
Councilmember Susan Romaine,
Present.
Councilmember Damon Siles,
Present.
and Councilmember Sammy Slade.
Present.
All right, great. Well, we will start our meeting as we usually do every meeting with a reading. This is, we're getting near the end of Poetry Month, but we have another guest poet, I believe, here to say a poem for us tonight, Kathy. I think I saw Susan Spalt in the waiting room. So there is Susan being brought to the meeting. Hey there, Susan. We see your name, but we can't hear you yet or see you yet.
All right, there I am.
Right.
So,
Good
yes,
to see you.
I'm home.
Okay.
And I'm taking liberties this month, our first month back in Carrboro for a while. We were in Seattle with the grandchildren, so I'm writing a poem that was inspired by our now 3-year-old granddaughter. And it's a poem of optimism, as only a child can give you. It's called One Morning in October. One morning in October, Alice, not yet 3, looked out the window and said, "This is the morning of the sun. This is the morning of the sun." She is too young to see COVID cases rising, police brutality raging, our nation ripping at the seams. This is the morning of the sun. Alice, take my hand. Show me the sun. We will sing in the sun. We will sing of love in the sun. We will find hope in the sun. I cannot protect you from the shadows, but you can always show me the sun. Thank you all for your support.
Oh, awesome.
And the Poetry Festival, we're starting to think about it, and we appreciate your help and support.
Thank you, Susan. Thanks so much. That was an awesome poem. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Wow, y'all, that was great. So I have 2 proclamations that I just want to mention here. And the first one is a proclamation recognizing Carrboro as a breastfeeding family-friendly community.
And we do have someone here, Mayor Lavelle.
Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and bring her over. I was wondering if she was there. So I went out of order on this too. So.
We have Shauna Daniels. I'll bring her over right now.
Okay, great.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Shauna, thanks for being with us here for
Thanks
this.
for having me.
Yeah, great. So I'll go ahead and read the proclamation, and then afterward, if you want to make a few remarks, you can feel free to do so.
Sounds good.
So the title of it is Breastfeeding Family-Friendly Community. Whereas families are a priority in the town of Carrboro, and part of helping families to thrive is ensuring they receive community support to develop and sustain healthy lifestyles. And whereas according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Family Physicians, and other leading health organizations, breastfeeding is the optimal food for infants. And whereas breastfeeding is associated with lower rates of childhood illness, such as obesity, diabetes, and infectious diseases, as well as reduced risk of maternal, breast, and ovarian cancers, and a faster recovery from childbirth as compared to formula feeding. And whereas breastfeeding promotes social and emotional development, benefits the entire family, and is associated with lifelong health and development, and a parent's decision to feed human milk to infants directly or by expressing should be supported by family members and the community. And whereas promoting best practices in human milk feeding for healthcare providers and clinics encourages families to start and continue to feed human milk. And whereas creating a local breastfeeding friendly childcare designation supports parents and childcare staff to continue breastfeeding and offering expressed milk when returning to work or school, and supports childcare staff with on-site breastfeeding facilities or spaces. And whereas encouraging our local education systems to include breastfeeding and human milk feeding curricula at all levels normalizes breastfeeding, and collaborating on community resources and building community awareness can positively impact breastfeeding success. And whereas our community is proud to have attained broad support in direct community actions, UNC Women's Hospital, any birthing center, Women's Birth and Wellness Center have attained baby-friendly hospital initiative designations. The Orange County Health Department has received the North Carolina Breastfeeding Coalition Mother-Baby Clinic Award, and childcare programs in our community have been designated breastfeeding friendly. And whereas by providing a supportive and welcoming environment, a breastfeeding friendly community encourages families of all races, ethnicities, and family structures to initiate and continue optimal infant feeding and nursing. Now therefore be it resolved, I, Lady Lavelle, Mayor of Carrboro, do hereby proclaim the town of Carrboro to be a 2021 breastfeeding family friendly community. This, the 27th day of April, 2021. So, all right. So, Shauna, thank you for being here with us. And if you'd like to make any remarks, feel free to do so.
Sure. So my name is Shauna Daniels, and I am an early childhood education professional. I'm also a member of Breastfeed Orange, which is a nonprofit initiative that started right here in Carrboro. Breastfeed Orange NC is working towards eliminating inequities in breastfeeding support by transforming communities just like ours. Your reproclamation of Carrboro as a breastfeeding family community during this National Minority Health Month is meaningful to us because we see breastfeeding as a great equalizer, as it goes a long way towards canceling out health inequities between being born in poverty or being born in affluence. Your reproclamation declares Carrboro's support of marginalized families whose voices and bodies are often overlooked. We again thank you for declaring Carrboro as a breastfeeding family community that will be healthier and more welcoming community for all families. Thank you again.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Shauna. And I like that reproclamation because I know I've done it a time or two. And that's why I also inserted 2021, doing it again this year. So thank you for being here and for your comments. Yes, Randy.
Yeah, Shauna, thank you so much. And I want to thank the Orange breastfeeding group 37 years ago. When our son was born, we experienced a lot of pushback within community, especially in restaurants and public spaces. And that was mostly in Chapel Hill, I might add. But the fact is that we've come a long way and we still have a long way to go, especially in having young mothers come to understand that it not only is a healthy choice, but it is a nurturing choice. The time spent with an infant during the breastfeeding meal times are some of the most comforting and assuring times in child development. So I thank you, and I thank your organization. I think the last time I attended a meeting was over at Oasis. So I thank you for your work.
Thanks, Randy. Okay. All right. Well, and again, thank you, Shauna, for being here. We appreciate it. Okay. So Kathy, next I'm going to go ahead and just go to this other proclamation then. It's a proclamation for recognizing 2021 Arbor Day.
Lydia?
Yes.
This is Damon. I just wanted to note that it looks like Fred Joyner has his hand up in the attendee room. I'm not sure if I'm not sure why, but just have been noting that over the last few minutes.
Okay. Kathy, you're going to bring Fred over to see what he wants?
It looks like his hand went down now that
Now David spoke.
no, now his hand's back up. Okay. So okay.
All right.
Hands back up.
Let's bring Fred on over.
Hi. Hello, everybody. I'm sorry.
Hi, Fred. Hi, Fred. Don't be sorry.
I wanted to read a poem and I was a little late getting home, so I'm really sorry about that. If you have time, I will. I see you're already in the middle of things, but I apologize for late.
Well, two things, Fred. First of all, so Susan Spalt read a poem, I guess.
Oh, she did?
Yeah, the last of the Poets Council. So she.
Oh, okay.
read a
Okay.
poem. So that's one thing. But the second thing is, maybe since we got you here, could you tell us very quickly, just for the listening public, Sunday is Carrboro Day. Can you talk to us the details about Sunday in terms of folks that might want to attend the poetry reading?
Absolutely. So from 2 to 3, I think it's from 2 to 3 o'clock, we have what we do is poetry in the round. Now, pre-COVID, we used to all gather in the meeting room there in town hall and sit in a big circle as big as we could get it and just share poems one by one. But now, under kind of the under pandemic rules and in consideration of our loved ones and neighbors, we're going to do it virtually. And so we'll continue our tradition of poetry in the round and share poems. I believe that Parks and Rec sent out, and I do think it will be posted around social media as well, how to link up with poetry in the round if you'd like to come and share a poem. But that's what we're going to be doing. Unfortunately, there won't be us reading between bands or anything like that, but we will sharing poetry and just maintaining our ethos of creativity and creative language. So
awesome. Thank you. Thanks for giving us some details about that. And also, just FYI, you're coming in and out a little bit. I think where you are, the connection's a little bit. You came in and out a little bit, but we heard most of it. So.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
No worries. I think we caught most of what we needed to know from you. So, people can either come and listen, or they can come and listen and read a poem.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Well, we appreciate that. Let's see. Jackie has her hand up. Yeah, Jackie.
Thank you. Fred gave me the perfect segue into this. I want to remind people that Carrboro is taking applications currently for young people who are interested in apprenticing in the arts for the summer. It's for residents of Carrboro, and it's up to $1,000 for 15 hours a week. It's open to artists who are high school juniors or seniors, as well as college students. And I'm reminded, as I saw Fred last week, and we talked about how great it would be to have a poet apprentice for Fred. So all you young poets out there, but any art, it could be writing, it could be acting, it could be arts administration. The application's on our website, and please apply.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jackie. Thanks for bringing that up. All right, Damon, do you want Fred, or are you gonna?
I do, yeah. So
Okay,
I kind of feel, kind of operating under the principle that anytime our poet laureate shows up and says he wants to read a poem, especially Fred Joyner, I'm kind of hoping, although we did get a lovely poem from Susan, Fred, if you wouldn't mind reading your poem, I would like it.
Crank it up, Fred. Crank it up.
And Fred, the reason I said that about you breaking up just a little is I didn't know if you were able to adjust for reading of it. But if it keeps breaking up, I'll let you know if we can. And maybe it's just me, or is it breaking up a little bit? Oh, a little bit. Yeah,
it is
a little bit. Let's see here. All right, hopefully that's a little bit better.
Actually, it does. You're not breaking up right now, so.
Okay.
So
my favorite Saint Lucille Clifton. And it's a hopeful poem, I think. Birthday. Today, we are possible. The morning green and laundry sweet opens itself and we enter. Blind and muling. Everything waits for us. The snow kingdom sparkling and silent in its glacial cap. The cane fields, shining and sweet in the south, as the day arrives with all its clumsy blessings, what we will become waits in us like an ache.
Nice. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred.
Sure. Thank you for
Awesome.
having me. Thank you. Yeah.
No, we appreciate it. Thank you, Fred. And we'll see you next Tuesday.
I'll be there.
Okay. All righty.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, folks. So let me head back on here with this proclamation of Arbor Day 2021. Whereas on Arbor Day, we celebrate trees and honor their essential role in the ecology of our planet. As the Arbor Day Foundation states, trees provide the very necessities of life itself. They clean our air, protect our drinking water, create healthy communities, and feed the human soul. And whereas the history of this day dates back to 1872, when J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for planting trees. On April 10, 1872, the date of the first Arbor Day, approximately 1 million trees were planted in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the United States and by nations around the world, and whereas Carrboro has long been recognized as a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation, and whereas trees in our town increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community, and whereas trees can help to mitigate the Earth's rise in atmospheric carbon by removing carbon from the atmosphere in a process called carbon sequestration, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of topsoil, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, and produce oxygen and provide habitat for wildlife. And trees are also a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood, and countless other products. And whereas in the spirit of Arbor Day, the Town of Carrboro Public Works Department will join together to plant a tree in order to celebrate that day. Now, therefore, be it resolved, I, Lydia Lavelle, Mayor of Carrboro, do hereby proclaim Friday, April 30th as Arbor Day in Carrboro, and urge all residents to help protect our trees and forests and to support our town's urban forestry program. Further, I encourage all residents to plant trees to promote the well-being of present and future generations. This, the 27th day of April, 2021. So there you go, Arbor Day this week. So, all right. So we're on now then to
Lydia, may I make a quick comment?
yeah. Can I say something really quick first? Is this it's not about Arbor Day, right? Yours is something new. Okay.
Arbor Day. Arbor Day.
It is about Arbor Day. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say, if folks haven't read Overstory by Richard Powell, give yourself a treat through this summer when we have a summer break. If you ever thought you appreciated trees, reading Overstory will really give it even more texture and meaning. Richard Powell, Overstory, and happy Arbor Day.
Thanks, Randy. Thanks. And actually, I've read it. It's a great book. It is. So, okay. So before we get into the announcements of upcoming meetings, I just wanted to ask real quick, y'all, about the putting together the letter to submit with the comments about the coal plant. And I know we all got some information about what should go into that. Thank you, Sammy. And I just wondered if I know Susan offered to help edit. If who wants to maybe kind of bring that together? Jackie, I see your hands up. Yes.
I'm not offering to help write it, but I do want to make sure I sent everybody a link through text about the commitment that UNC has made to climate change and to going coal free. And so I think there's a disconnect between these two things. And that's why I sent the link. So whoever is writing that letter, I would encourage you to go to that link and say, live up to your promise.
Yeah. So I think that's a good point. Sammy.
Thanks, Jackie, for pointing that out. And the further context is UNC had already committed to phasing out coal 10 years ago, and they've broken that promise. So there's just a string of broken promises. But yeah, I'd be happy to help write that. And thanks, Susan, for volunteering to help edit it. And we'd definitely include mention of your link, Jackie. Thanks.
So let's try to, Sammy, that over the course of the next week, do it, edit it, send it around so folks can have it, and the next Tuesday we'll approve it. So I think the timeline worked with what she told us. So thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, great. Okay, then we're on to announcement of upcoming meetings, Kathy.
I'm actually going to do that. So.
Oh, okay, Mary, great.
So on Monday, May 3rd, we have the Carrboro Tourism Development Authority meeting at 3:00. And on Tuesday, May 4th, the Youth Advisory Board meeting at 4:30. And on Tuesday, May 4th, the next Town Council meeting at 7 o'clock.
Okay, thank you. And let's see, Randy, you go ahead.
Yeah, tomorrow night at 6 o'clock is the TJ Cog meeting, Board of Delegates. And let's see, the other one I was going to mention. Nope, there's not another one before, but that's one I wanted to add. And thank you, Mary.
Okay, I was going to add, we had a little short announcement about the poetry event at Carrboro Day, but it will be coming up on Sunday, right? And so I think there are various events. I know I've seen them online, some entertainment, Richard Ellington, the Poets Council. So there are several virtual events going on Sunday if folks want to tune into those. So I thought I'd throw that out there too. So, all right. If no one else has anything, then Kathy, do we have anyone signed up for public comment for something that's not on the agenda?
We do not.
Okay. All right.
We do have people that are here that have asked to speak during the tax assessor presentation. So just as a note for that.
Okay. Yeah, I was aware of at least one of those. So great. Okay. So Mr. Manager, then the consent agenda.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. There are 8 items on the consent agenda. The first item is approval of the meeting minutes from March 16th and April 13th. And Kathy or Mary, do you have the amendments?
I do. I'm not sure if council needs to discuss the changes any further, but there were amendments for the April 13th meeting from council members Romaine, Slade, and Siles, and Mayor Lavelle. And there were several comments or emails to me individually. I think all of those said they did not want the meeting minutes to be amended further. And same on March 16th would be council members Slade and Romaine and Mayor Lavelle.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy. I'll go ahead and go through the items and y'all can decide what you want to do. The second item is adoption of a town code amendment creating the Racial Equity Commission and making appointments to the commission. And those appointments, as outlined in your staff report, would be Betty Curry, Namdi Brandon, Dan Meyer, Emily Boynton, Nathaniel Davis, Liz Carter, Kenyatta Clark, and Makita Ma'at. The third item on your agenda is an Affordable Housing Advisory Commission funding recommendation, which would award $15,600 to Empowerment to renovate 12 affordable housing rental units in Hillmont and Collins Crossing. The fourth item is the Affordable Housing Quarterly Report. The fifth is approval of an MOU for the Criminal Justice Debt Program. The sixth item is the Police Department's Quarterly Equity Report. That includes the last quarter of 2020, of calendar year 2020, and the first quarter of 2021. The seventh item is disposal of surplus property and an online public auction. And then the final item would set a public hearing for conditional rezoning for 410, 420, and 430 Smith Level Road for May the 25th. Mayor.
Thank you. I see Barbara and then Jackie and then Sammy. So Barbara, what do you want to pull?
Thank you, David and Lydia. What I want to try to do is move 3 through 7. I know there's maybe questions about 1, 2, and probably 8 to be pulled. Does Sammy, you have enough?
Yeah, 6, please.
Oh, 6. Okay. So 3, 4, 5, and 7. Is it okay for us? Susan has something.
I was hoping to just make a quick comment about 5.
So 3, 4, 6, and 7? 3, 4, 7.
I'll second that.
Motion for 3, 4, 6, 7 or 3, 4, 7?
There must be 3, 4, 6, 7. Nobody's saying anything. 3, 4,
3, 4, 6, 7. Motion by Barbara.
I second it.
Sammy wants to pull item number 6. So
Is it 6? So it's 3, 4, 7. Thank you, Damon.
And I second.
Okay, and Randy seconded it. So all in favor, say aye. Jackie?
Aye.
Damon?
Aye.
Randy?
Aye.
Sammy?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
And then me, aye. Okay, so we'll just go through the other ones just in order then. So number 1, approval of the minutes. So I don't think we're okay with April 13. The March 16 minutes, what Kathy sent out to us, I know there's this one sentence that we had some conversation around. This is how Kathy has it in the minutes. After the meeting, Councilmember Slade notified the council he had mistakenly entered an affirmative vote in the negative. And while he felt he voted no, all members of the town council heard him say yes. So, Kathy, are you telling me that a majority of people told you they wanted to keep that the way it was?
I don't know that it's a majority. I think maybe you all should just talk about that. And I apologize. That language was, part of the discussion that night and from Nick's memo. So that's
right. I hear you. Okay. All right. Let's have Sammy comment, and then we'll hopefully not spend too much time on this. But go ahead, Sammy.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. I think that helps clarify some that it was partly from Nick's memo, and I think the problem is to the extent that we're describing what I notified the council. Nick's memo doesn't accurately represent what I notified. What I notified the council is that I felt there was a mistake entered. And that's why I'm suggesting a change, breaking it up into 2 sentences. But as you all may recall, the last time we had a conversation about this, really it's the second part that we approved including in the minutes. So whether we include the first half or not, I'm not wedded to that. I feel like we've already approved the second half, but we do go with the second half. I'd like it to reflect what we actually approved that night, which is what I included in the email, which is basically council member Slade, thought he was voting no. All members of the council heard yes.
Okay, Randy.
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable with that for 2 reasons. One, because this is not based on intent, it's based on action. And the other is, I'm just concerned that it says all members of the council heard yes. That's as if we misheard. And it just sheds a very poor light on it makes us responsible for hearing the wrong thing, which we didn't. So, I think that the vote needs to stand without being justified.
Okay, Damon.
I didn't have my hand up, but I will comment.
I thought you had it up I'm sorry. I thought I saw it up when Randy's was up. Okay. So, my comment is that I feel like we're treading old ground again. I feel like we went through this at the last meeting when Randy, you made the same point and Jackie made the point and someone else made the point. I forget. And it was a 4-3 vote. So I kind of feel like the language that I suggested to people, which was really the same as what Sammy said just now, except for it was all. I mean, I'm okay with that. I feel like that's what we agreed to last week. But I hear what you're saying, Randy. You made the same points last week, and Jackie made the same point last week, and I forget who else. Maybe I don't remember. Was it you, Barbara? Okay. So that being said, I don't really. Can someone just please make a motion of the way they want
I'll make a motion to say what Lydia forwarded. After the meeting, Councilmember Slade notified the council that the affirmative vote recorded for him was a mistake, period. Councilmember Slade thought he was voting no, comma, other members of the council heard yes.
Okay, so that's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Damon seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Nay.
Jackie?
Nay.
Me? Aye. Sammy?
Aye.
Barbara?
No.
Susan?
Aye.
Damon?
Aye.
Okay, all right, very good. So can we have a motion then to approve the minutes of April 13 and I guess March 16 with that written that way? Sammy?
Yes, so moved, with that included in both of those minutes.
Okay, right, well, that's right, because it was in the other one too. So motion by Sammy, second by Damon. All in favor, say aye. Randy?
Nay.
Jackie?
Nay.
Me? Aye. Sammy?
Aye.
Barbara?
No.
Susan?
Aye.
Damon?
Aye.
Okay, all right. That's such a close vote on minutes. All right, second item, the town code amendment about the Racial Equity Commission. I know, I see Jackie's hand up, and I know Barbara made a motion not including it, so I don't know.
No, I had raised my hand to pull the last item. So when we finish this one, I want to talk about the last item.
Okay, all right, Barbara.
Yeah, so just really quickly, we did receive 2 more applications today. Kendall Lytle and Donald Hawkins. And so I don't know that we necessarily need to wait a couple of weeks as we have somebody else to, a couple of more people to look at. As far as the lady, Miss Makita, wanting to be moved from Parks and Rec to the Racial Equity Commission, I prefer she kind of stays where she is, to maintain that diversity there. We have not had a conversation about folks being able to serve dually, although I know some of us are interested in having that conversation, and that's for another time. So we had Nathaniel Davis Sr., the only male represented from the community members as far as appointing. And so I would love to go ahead and put Donald Hawkins there. He is the son of Lori Clark. He did grow up here and has some years here, and also, as well as some history, some good family history that could be contributed. And maybe we could have Makita as an alternate. I mean, we don't know that somebody may not be able to serve, but certainly all this is up for discussion. But I do think that we could appoint tonight and not wait based on what we received today.
So would your motion be to go ahead and appoint? I know there were several that were liaisons from different boards. The
liaisons are fine. I think all those are.
So you'll make a motion for the liaisons as well as the two you just mentioned?
Yeah, I can make a motion as far as community members for Nathaniel Davis Sr., Liz Carter, Kenyatta Clark, Kendall Lytle, and Donald Hawkins for community members. And then, of course, I believe Amy Singleton, Namdi Brandon from the EAB, Amy Singleton from AHAC, Farmers Market, I can't remember. Was it Emily?
I know Dan Meyer was one, I thought.
Dan Meyer from Economic Sustainability, I'm sorry. And then the Farmers Market, was it Emily? What's her name?
Boynton.
Thank you, David. Emily Boynton. So that would be my motion, and I don't know how council members feel about.
Isn't Betty with AHAC? Isn't
Betty? I'm sorry. I don't know why I said Amy.
Okay, and I'll second your motion with Betty. Yeah.
Okay.
Betty.
Okay. All right. So motion by Barbara for those applicants, and a second by Randy. So let's have discussion. I see Jackie's hand up, and then I see Susan's hand up. All right, Jackie, your hand's up for later. Okay, Susan. Yeah.
Yes. I'm fine with that. I think the 2 applications for the youth seats just came in today, and I haven't had a chance to review those. So if we did make appointments, I wonder if we could hold off on the youth seat appointments until perhaps our next meeting.
I thought we only had one. Who's the other one?
Was only Kendall, or do we have another? We had 2?
Mhm.
Just one. I think it's
Oh.
just one youth seat today. We did have 2 applications that came in, but one was for a community member seat with 20 plus years, and one was a youth member seat.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
So
So there's just one application for the youth seat at this point.
that's right.
Right. And it's Kendall, who's on our youth advisory board too, which is,
He sounds great. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kendall's
So, so do you still want to hold off on the youth one, Susan? Are you okay?
No, I'm good to go. I'm good to go.
All right, very good. All right, any other questions? And if not, we'll go ahead and vote. All in favor, say aye. Randy?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
Me, aye. Sammy?
Aye.
Barbara?
I with a question. So what do we want to do about Makita? Is there any, do we want to put her in queue as an alternate, or do we want to just have that dual advisory board discussion prior to doing anything like that?
My sense is let's have the dual discussion at another time.
Cool.
That's what I'm thinking. So
That's fine.
Susan?
Aye.
Barbara, aye. Susan?
So does this mean that we're voting now not to have Makita seated at this time?
Correct.
Okay. Aye.
Okay, and then Damon.
Aye.
All right, very good, y'all. Good job. Okay, so now we're on number 5, the Criminal Justice Debt Program.
Yes, that's me. I was hoping just to say a word or two. I'm just really thrilled that Carrboro will be joining Chapel Hill with the Criminal Justice Debt Program, providing $7,500 to relieve court debt, helping lower income criminal justice involved community members. As everyone knows, this funding will really help address the criminalization of poverty. So when somebody is unable to pay a court fee and then they get saddled with additional fees, or their driver's license gets revoked, or they could even end up having to serve court time, and all of those things snowball into just an even bigger poverty trap for folks. So I'm thrilled that we're going to be joining Chapel Hill. It's a great example of collaboration where we both municipalities come together, and we can, through the efficiencies of running the program, we can save a few dollars along the way. And I just want to say I'm looking forward to Chief ATAX reporting into us in terms of how the program is going. And, it would also be great if we could learn when the $7,500 gets spent down. So we would have that opportunity to, possibly allocate additional funding for it in the middle of the year.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. And this is actually through June. This one is, right? So,
yes.
So it's a kind of a short period right now for it.
Right.
So, okay, that's great. Well, thank you for that. Do you want to go ahead and make a motion then to accept the item?
Yes, I'd like to. So for item number 5, a motion to accept that.
Okay, a motion for the item number 5. Is there a second by Damon? All in favor, say aye. Randy?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
Me, aye. Sammy?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
And Damon?
Aye.
All right, very good. So next we have the police department quarterly equity report. Yes.
Yes, thank you. David, I had a question for Chief if he's available.
I believe he's
question for
present.
you.
I was
I don't
looking
know
in
if you
the-
need Chief.
Yeah, no, he's in the waiting room. Kathy can bring him over.
Okay.
Bringing him over right now.
Hey, good evening.
Hey,
there,
Chief
Chief.
Tech. Thank you for those quarterly reports. That's very important for us to have tabs on how y'all are doing your work. And I very much appreciate it. And also, I just wanted to express gratitude for your sharing data with the Orange County Bail Bond Justice Group. I just had a question. In the weighted population, I just want to understand what that means. Like, what does that number mean?
So what it is we have the data analyst, and what she basically did is looked at, of all the vehicles that we stopped, all the drivers, what was their residency status? And what they did is they combined, like if 9% of our traffic stop drivers were from Durham, then 9% of that weighted composite would be that population amount pulling from Durham. So it's sort of an attempt, I guess, on her part to kind of level it out, because as again, if 75% of the people we're interacting with in a traffic stop are not from Carrboro, one of the challenges was to prevent, and this was a bigger discussion. I think you had raised it on the bail bonds one, and I think it's a good one to explore. Actually, I was reading a RAND report, and I can get into that off topic. But I think the reality is, when comparing to benchmarks, it can be a bit challenging to find a benchmark that kind of accurately represents what it is, and I think that's, you know, as we go forward with this, I think that's one of those academic questions that I've always struggled with myself, to try to figure out what is a metric, what is a benchmark that we can figure out is accurate and is not just, you know, is not just based on simplicity and ease. And so that's something going forward, you know, especially as we get into this task force on the, you know, public safety, I think is something to explore. I spent my day reading a RAND report. I'd be happy to send it to all of you, just talking about the problems with benchmarks. And so I don't know if we'll have a perfect solution, but it is something I want to figure out. And I think the more voices on that, the better.
Great, thank you, Chief. That helps clarify. I'm grateful for y'all wrestling with this question, because it has been an issue of how do you account for the fact that people from out of our town come through town, and so the demographics don't necessarily reflect that. But I didn't quite understand what your explanation was. If you could just forward an explanation from the data analyst, I would appreciate that. So it can help me wrap my head around it. In terms of the search, the quarterly report y'all shared, I was struck by the hit rate and contraband found per race. And I noticed, I think it was in the last quarter of last year, 8 to 1, one contraband found for 8 searches of African Americans, compared to 50% contraband found for white population. And I'm just, I feel currently in this atmosphere that we're in nationally, there are a lot of questions surrounding the ways in which suspicion of African Americans is overrepresented. And I think that's the kind of data that kind of affirms that. Whether it's correct to draw that conclusion or not, I don't know, but I just wanted to flag it for you to kind of keep an eye on that.
So one of the things I think in the, you know, what is good to me is that we have low numbers, but the challenge is with low numbers is, what do those numbers tell us? And I think the nice thing about this report and these numbers, these are actually small enough that I can actually look at these, and I can actually, you know, pull these incidents and say, what was the reason for the search? What are we doing here? So I think that's something is completely reasonable with these small numbers. Now, if this was 500, that might be a bit of a challenge, but we're dealing with, I think I need reading glasses, unfortunately, here, but I think we're dealing with 23. So 23 is manageable. So if we explore those 23 cases, I think that's going to be good data. And like I said, with the discussion about the benchmark, you know, if we're doing something wrong, I want to know it and I want to fix it. But I also want to make sure we're looking at it properly. And I think this is that process that we're engaging in, and I think it's critical.
Great, thanks, Chief. And my last question had to do with that response that was given to the report that the Chief said you can't really rely on the census data. And it looks like you're doing research on that. So I won't ask that question. I just look forward to your forwarding that report and for us to continue having this conversation. Thank you so much.
Can I comment one other thing on that bail bond real quick, because this is something. So in North Carolina, there are 4 levels of misdemeanors. There's A1, 1, 2, and 3. And as you get to 3, that's like noise violation. And so what my comment was about, just, you know, are we arresting, are we not? That spectrum of misdemeanor violations covers a gamut, right? So if we go to a domestic and we have an assault on a female, that's going to be an arrest. And that should be an arrest pretty much all of the time, as should a DWI. But if we're arresting people for noise ordinance, that's a problem that I want to fix, because we shouldn't be doing that. And that's not something that we've done since I've been here, but that's part of, as we look across those 4 spectrums, the less severe misdemeanor should have hardly any arrests. really hardly any citations if we can avoid it. Now, as you get up into the assaults with a deadly weapon, sexual battery, those are the A1s. We should see arrests for those across the board. And so if there is disparity in that, then that's a problem. We need to figure that one out.
Chief, yeah, thank you for pointing that out about the study. It's one of the comparatives that they drew and how Carrboro stands out in post-pandemic. There seem to be a lot more arrests than citations. And so I'm glad you're looking into that and look forward to learning more about why that is.
I actually printed out all of our arrests for whites and blacks for 2019 and 2020, and I'm looking at that. And what I'm seeing is the arrests that we've made are DWI, assaults on a female, all of the kinds of things that you would want, not want because nobody wants to do it, but would be more appropriate for an arrest. But I'm also aware that if there's people who are making arrests for stuff we don't need to be arresting for, then that needs to be fixed. So, and I appreciate your support on that. So data and feedback, please send it my way.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Sammy. Now, Chief, Barbara had her hand up. Barbara, you have a question for Chief?
Yes, ma'am.
I do, since he graced us with his presence. So I was wondering about if you think that there is a connection between like maybe equipment regulatory stops and contraband, or you know what I mean? Like, is there some kind of connection there, how long are we going to do this equipment regulatory stuff?
And it's interesting that you
I'm just asking.
Yeah, no, and that's a fair question. So here's
Thank you.
And this was interesting for me. So this is kind of my first go. And the irony is I have two equity reports to compare, right? So last quarter of 2020, regulatory stops were 17% of our stops. Going into the first quarter of 2021, they went to 31%. So that's the first thing I noticed. So I said, all right, what's going on here? Now, I'll tell you in the big picture, a regulatory stop generally is going to be a new officer stop. And the reason it's a new officer stop, because in order to stop someone for speeding, generally use radar and LiDAR. That requires a class, that requires certification. If you're stopping for DWIs, that requires certification as standardized field sobriety test. So a new officer that you're just gotten out of field training, going out here, an expired tag is very exciting, right? So they're like, wow. And I remember I was new, but I went back as part of this double equity report here that I think was actually glorious to be able to compare. And I looked at Chief Horton's directive from 2014, 2015 on regulatory stops. And I'm looking at it, and I'm actually meeting with all of the supervisors next week, because what the conversation needs to be, one, we have young people, but we have people here to direct young people. And so do we need officers that can function? Are some regulatory stops appropriate? Yes. I think that's part of the bigger picture. But if regulatory stops are the majority, or 31%, I don't think that's okay. So I looked at this data, and what I found out was one new officer in this quarter of 2021 was responsible for 40% of our regulatory stops. One new officer. Now, here's the challenge with new officers, right? Energy, but focus and drive. You need to direct that. So my conversation, and I'm having this as I step into this role with officers, it's great to stop a car, but what else are you doing? Do you know the name of the manager at Food Lion? Do you know the name of the manager at Estes Park Apartments? And so these are the conversations I'm having with my supervisors and my officers, because regulatory stops honestly are low-hanging fruit. And the reality is, again, the search productivity is an issue. And what are we going to find honestly? I mean, that's the question that's always struck my mind. Is it good to be an optimist? But I don't know what we're going to find here, and we're needlessly alienating people. And so I don't find that particularly productive, right? And actually, one of the things, I've got a list. There's like 500 of them, but one of the things is I'm looking at drugs and drug enforcement in general, because I think there's a real revision needed there, right? There's a real sense of what are we actually trying to do? And I think the naloxone that we started carrying back in 2014 and started using in 2015, kind of for me was a mindset. So it shifted from, everybody's bad, keep an eye on them, to harm reduction, and get an idea like what's going on in the world, right? What are people facing in their personal lives And so that's where I'm going with this. I've had a lot of conversations, and my hair will be gray by the summer because I'm having a lot of conversations. But please keep the feedback coming. Please keep the questioning, because the probing reality of what we're doing, I went to a liberal arts college. I had long hair and drove a motorcycle. So I want this system to be right. I don't want to be making people angry. Oh, I want my wife to be coming in the side door. So I want this to work, and I want this to work for everybody. And this is, at the core what I'm about. So that process is ongoing, and I'm excited for the public safety task force. The concept of public safety as opposed to enforcement is exciting to me. So keep these questions coming. I'm excited. This is an opportunity, and full force.
Hold up, Chief. Hold up. Is there a connection between those equipment regulatory?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I can ramble. I apologize.
Yeah, or are the contrabands more, maybe suspected DWI, or you actually?
Let me look, right? So
yeah, I was just wondering if one thing led to another.
So normally the way it works, if you arrest somebody, if you arrest the driver of a vehicle, you generally can search incident to arrest. You used to have it used to be an open door. It changed in 2009 with the Supreme Court case. Basically, it has to be related to the charge you're arresting for. So if you arrest somebody for driving while impaired, the question is it likely that you'll find contraband relative to the driving while impaired? Probably. There may be a beer or something. Now, if I'm stopping somebody for financial fraud that occurred 6 months ago in another jurisdiction, it's unlikely that I'll find contraband in that vehicle. So there's a different decision-making matrix for that. But let me look at it. I'm really starting to delve into the data, and I think I think that's a good question. Like, why are we searching? Why are we, the numbers are down, but what are we doing? So that's part of this process. So thank you for that question.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Chief. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
Right. So will someone move the item then of the report?
So moved. Thanks,
All right,
Chief.
Thank you.
Moved by Sammy. Thanks, Chief. Moved by Sammy, seconded by Damon.
Thanks, Chief.
All in favor, say
Thanks,
aye.
Chief.
Randy?
Aye.
Jackie?
Gratefully, aye.
Me, aye. Sammy?
Aye.
Barbara? I think she said aye. Susan?
Also aye.
And Damon?
All right. Thank you, Chief.
Yeah,
Thank
Chief,
you.
and it's great to still see your sense of humor come through as Chief. It's awesome. So
It's who I am, unfortunately, for better or for worse. I apologize.
all
I
right,
want to
very
see
good.
that long hair picture.
I'll find it. And I'm astride a motorcycle, so prepare yourself.
All right, very good. All right, y'all, we're on then. The item number 8 was pulled, and Jackie, did you pull that item? Okay.
Yes, I did. I pulled this item because I'm not going to vote for it. I think we're hearing loud and clear that this is not a rezoning that we would have sought. It's not a rezoning that's in our planning. It's not a rezoning that would be in the Carrboro vision. I just don't see any benefit to our community of moving forward with it. So I'm not going to vote for it.
Okay, thanks, Jackie. Randy and then Sammy.
Yeah, and likewise, I've been very uncomfortable with this item as it's really not within our value-added land use. It's not how we vision our plans going forward for land within our jurisdiction. And I feel that to hold a public hearing would be sending the wrong message when I could not vote for it, and I feel the developer needs to be signaled authentically.
Thank you, Randy. I had Sammy and then Barbara and then Susan.
Yeah, I remember the early on conversation. Unfortunately, wasn't able to make the joint review, but I've certainly gotten, like everyone else here, a lot of emails about this proposal. And one of the things that in the courtesy review that was mentioned or asked of the developer was the question of why so much storage in such a central location. And my sense is that one of the values we have for having mixed use is so that people can walk, play, and work near where they live. And storage doesn't serve that purpose. And I recognize one of the issues for alternatives to storage is the burden of parking. And to the extent that we require parking and there's a limited amount of space on this lot, I can understand why the developer would choose to do something like storage. But all that to say that I think the problem is our presumptive standards. And unfortunately, they're presumptive, so we don't have to require that degree of parking. More generally, I think beyond this use for what the text amendment and map change that they're proposing, I think we need to look into storage generally in our town and how appropriate it is. I don't feel like it's a high use value opportunity. So I too will not be voting for this tonight.
All right, thank you, Sammy. Let's see, Barbara and then Susan.
Barbara, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, Barbara, you're on mute.
I thought I clicked it. Sorry. I won't be voting for the rezoning either, for all the reasons that I've heard from my colleagues. I join them in not granting this public hearing, because I do remember in the joint review there was a lot of concern, a lot of questions about the parking, like Councilmember Slade mentioned, the use. Was it good, for that particular section of town, that adjoining community, and of course stormwater, stormwater management, just to name a few, and not to mention the community members that have reached out to us and expressed great concern about moving forward. And I just don't think this is the right use of land there, or a good use of the land there. And I just don't think this project would integrate well into that community. So, thanks.
Thanks, Barbara. Susan and then Damon.
Yes, I agree with everything that's been said, and so I too will be voting against the setting of a public hearing. And I do, on top of everything that's been said, I just want to, let the community members know that we really appreciate hearing from everybody. Lots of concerns, everything from the stormwater and drainage issues to the steep grading. The high retaining wall, the bright lights when our residents are trying to sleep at night, all of the additional traffic with 3 nearby schools. So many things were noted both through email, but also through the advisory boards and the joint review. And so I will be joining with everybody in voting against this too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Damon.
Thanks. I agree with Susan. I appreciate all the feedback we've gotten from folks living near the location. And it's important for us, I think, to, note how unusual it is for us to be getting that kind of response to a request like this so early in this. We're at this phase of a project like this, of a proposal like this. And I think that's one indication for us as people who are here to kind of take the pulse, reflect what the community is asking for, that's a good indication for us about maybe needing to ask some more questions. In addition to that, I didn't have the benefit of being in the Joint Advisory Board review of this request, but have heard, from my colleagues both tonight and in conversation one-on-one that there were some pretty substantial questions raised during that courtesy review. And that to me also just adds to that signal that I feel we're getting from folks that there's something here we need to be careful about. It's not common. It's actually very rare for us to not go take the step of setting the public hearing, because we know that setting a public hearing is one of those important opportunities for the entire community to weigh in on a question like this. But we also, I think, have to be, aware that we don't, as I think Randy said in her first comment, we need to send a signal here that we don't want to waste anybody's time, right? We don't want to waste the developer, the petitioner's time in putting them through a process that's not likely, it sounds like, to even be successful if we were to have a public hearing. And we don't want to waste the time of the town in putting the staff through that process either if it's not likely to be successful. So I join with everyone in planning to vote no on this request, or in certainly not setting a public hearing.
I don't think we even vote. We
David.
simply take no action.
That's
Thanks,
right.
David. Yeah, let me, I'll just make a quick comment also, and that is that a lot of what Damon just said, I mimic some remarks I was going to make, that this is really unusual. I think it's only happened once or twice since I've been on the council where we haven't set a public hearing. In fact, I was kind of aware there was something being proposed for Office Smith level, but since I don't go to joint review anymore, I started learning more about it, as you all did with all of our emails and then some of the recapping of the joint review. I think it speaks to this advice we always give to folks when they come forward with development proposals, to early on try to engage the neighbors, early on try to figure out if there's anything that's even going to work. I mean, personally, I feel a little bit bad that it's even come to this point for the developer to come this far, where now we are, hearing and thankfully just kind of cutting it off because we kind of can see what's going to happen. So I feel bad for this developer in that sense. But I appreciate everyone's thoughtful comments on that. So we will just go by that item then and move onward. So Mr. Manager, on to our next item. Oh, wait, Sammy, do you have a comment?
Lydia, I would like to look into this question of storage facilities as they exist, and like whether we should be allowing more of them. So I'd like to make a motion for staff to come back to us for us to, on a work session, explore that question.
Or perhaps maybe even preliminarily to get just information back from them about it. And then
Sure.
If we need to talk about it, session, let's at least
Sure.
get the info back, maybe a report sometime, Mr. Manager, on this, on just, because, also storage areas, they're taking on a new life too. I mean, there's the old traditional ones we've seen for a while, but in a lot of urban areas, they're becoming kind of something people do because where people live is so small. It's also a little different too. So I'd be interested in that as well. So
should I do? Is that a can I make it as a motion request?
Kathy, should Sammy make that as a motion to request some information back from staff about storage facilities, or is that something you'll note in them? What do you want to do?
I think it will be best if the council wants to move forward with requesting the information, that it be done by the council's vote.
Okay, thanks,
Okay.
Kathy. So I'll make a motion for a request on storage facilities during a work session conversation for the council.
Okay, so motion for Sammy about info about storage facilities. Is there a second?
Well, I thought that what Lydia was suggesting, Sammy, is that rather than saying we want a work session, just starting out preliminarily with just requesting some information from staff about the status of storage facilities in Carrboro and that kind of.
Sure, I'm happy to have that preliminary step. If we decide to go further, then we can.
Okay, so let's have so the motion's for a report back from staff about storage facilities. That's a motion by Sammy, second by Susan.
Well, actually, I have a quick question. Does that request, Sammy, need to be a little bit more specific in terms of the status of storage facilities? Are we looking at, to what extent are they at capacity, or do they, I'm just not sure if it's providing enough direction.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I thought it would be good to have a conversation during a work session, because I think that we all have a different understanding of what it is we want. And for me specifically, what I'm interested in is, for example, is looking into that as a use in our town, especially in areas where we would benefit more for high density mixed use on major like transportation corridors, walkability, bikeability. I just don't feel that kind of use is appropriate. It just ties up space that is super valuable.
Well, my suggestion might be, Sammy, that we get the report back first, and then we can, from there, work it into a work session.
Yeah, so to answer Susan, your question, I think it's really up to staff's discretion on what they understand our request is, and it's then our opportunity to follow up with this more formal process.
Okay, so thanks, Sammy. So motion by Sammy, second by Susan. All in favor, say aye. Me, aye. Randy,
Aye.
Sammy,
Aye.
Susan,
Aye.
Damon,
Aye.
Jackie,
Aye.
and Barbara.
Aye.
All right, very good. Thanks, Sammy.
And
Oh.
Lydia,
Oh,
I wanted to note that Anita has had her hand raised for a little while, and it looks like there's somebody else with her hand raised too.
in the waiting room.
Yes.
Okay, so Kathy, are we kind of trying who Damon's seeing in the waiting room and bringing over whoever?
I'm going to bring the person over. Anita's hand has now went down. There is another person with their hand raised, Dean's Hackney.
Okay, I think that's with regard to the item that we just decided not to vote on.
Yeah.
So does Mr. Hackney want to speak to us?
Yeah, it appears so. Do you want me to bring them over?
I'll bring over Mr. Hackney, yes.
Sorry, it's on mute. Hi, I just want to speak briefly to the project. It may be a little late, but I did just want to note that we substantially redesigned it since it went through concept review last summer. We're prepared to go back through concept review here the first week of May to kind of present some of the changes that we've taken from from the comments we received last summer. But that's all. That's where I'll leave it tonight. And appreciate the opportunity.
Mr. Hackney, it's good to see you. I remember meeting you last year at some point in the pandemic. And I think that, I'm looking over all the information we've received. It seemed to me that a really key part of it too was the storage facility. And it seemed like that also was a key part of your project that I don't know, I'm just kind of speaking.
I understand.
Yeah. Thank you for being here and appreciate your comments. But I think the council here has decided to go ahead and move on and not set the public hearing for the proposal. So
Understood. Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.
thank you. Okay, so Mr. Manager, next item.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and members of the council. You do have 2 items under other matters before your closed session. And the first item is a presentation by Nancy Freeman, who is the Orange County Tax Assessor, and she's going to provide a PowerPoint presentation regarding the recent tax reval. So Kathy, you want to bring over Nancy?
She should be in, and I'm just seeing some emails. I think there was questions on if she would be able to share her screen. The answer is yes, you should be able to. And if you need me to walk you through that, I'll be happy to do it. But there should be a green button down at the bottom middle of the Zoom screen. If you just hover over the bottom, it'll pop up. You can click on the green arrow, and then it will guide you through your screens that you have open in order to share them.
Great, thank you.
You're
Good
welcome.
evening.
Good evening, Ms. Freeman. Good to see you.
All right, so I believe I am now sharing my screen. Is that correct?
Yes, we can see your, yeah.
Okay, all right. So what I'm going to do is to give you the presentation for the revaluation. This is basic information on our revaluation, and there's information specific for Carrboro. And I know that there are questions and concerns about the North Side neighborhood and also the Pine Knolls area. So once I'm through with this presentation, I will provide some more information for you on that topic specifically so that we can update you on our situation. So now to get started, North Carolina counties must conduct a revaluation at least once every 8 years. Orange County traditionally follows a 4-year schedule for the revaluation. Our last revaluation was effective January 1 of 2017. This revaluation's effective date is January 1 of 2021. The revaluation is a process of updating the real property tax assessments to market value and present use value as of a single appraised date. The primary goal of the revaluation is to equalize the tax base. It's needed to realign the values of real property through the county to maintain equitable and uniform property values among the property owners. Market values are shaped by property sales. Our office has a responsibility to look at the sales, interpret the data, and estimate market values for all properties by way of mass appraisal methods. Market value is considered the price estimated in terms of money at which the property would change hands between a willing and financially able buyer and a willing seller, neither being under any compulsion to buy or sell, and both having reasonable knowledge of all the uses to which the property is adapted and for which it is capable of being used. We review all sales in the county to determine if they are qualified sales. We use qualified sales to shape the values of the property sales in the county. A qualified sale is also known as an arm's length transaction, when the buyer and seller are each acting in their own self-interest to try to get the best deal that they can. In most sales, the seller is trying to make a large profit while the buyer is trying to pay the least amount of money possible for the property. What is not a qualified sale? A foreclosure is not a qualified sale, and a sale where there is a relationship or business affiliation between the seller and the buyer is not considered a qualified sale. All residential and commercial land and permanent structures in Orange County are included in the revaluation. Personal property, such as motor vehicles or boats, planes, public utility property, business personal property, are not included in the revaluation. They are valued each year. Part of our revaluation efforts include a plan to inform property owners of the process of the revaluation. From our request for input from property owners long before the values are finalized, to assisting property owners with the appeals process, which is what we are doing at this point. 2 websites were launched in July of 2019. One is called the Property Records Card Search, and the site provides current information that is on record for each property in the county. It is an interactive web page that allows the user to review the property and report any issues to the tax office electronically. The second website is called the Public Compare website. It allows the user to review sales information on similar properties to their own, so they can see like properties and sales in the area. The tax office mailed data validation forms in February of 2020. The forms provided the basic information and characteristics of the properties, and we requested that taxpayers or property owners send them back to us with any corrections that were needed so that we could make sure that our information and data was as correct as possible. We received approximately 4,300 of those responses. We also included an information insert about the revaluation in our 2020 tax bills that were mailed out in July of 2020. We added a revaluation video to our website in July as well that explains the basics of the revaluation, a very condensed version of the information I'm giving you now. We provided a presentation at the Schedule of Values public hearing at the Board of Commissioners meeting in October of 2020. And again, we included an information insert about the revaluation with the listing forms for 2021 that were mailed in December of 2020. And we recently highlighted the revaluation in the News of Orange in early April 2021. We have also provided periodic public announcements for the county main webpage. We've highlighted the revaluation in the local newspaper advertisements and used social media to bring the revaluation process to the attention of the public. This is an important part of the revaluation because the more input that we have from property owners about their properties, the more accurately we can value the properties. We are continuing public outreach now. We are have public announcements to explain the appeals process and a recent Chamber of Commerce blog that included information about the appeals process as well. For the commercial properties, we use 2 commercial vendors. The first one was a local commercial real estate appraisal firm who provided market research and sales. A second commercial appraisal firm interpreted market data and provided recommended values for all the commercial properties, taking into the accounts effects that were available at that point for the pandemic. And our senior appraisal staff reviewed these recommended values before they were actually keyed into our system. The end result data was reviewed by our senior staff prior to entering the data into our system. Residential appraisal process explained. Residential properties are valued by the Orange County appraisal team that is made up of our appraisers on staff. Each appraiser is certified by the North Carolina Department of Revenue. They must pass required courses and maintain certification, and also maintain continuing education. The North Carolina Department of Revenue provides specific sales qualifying training, and our appraisers must attend. All of our appraisers have actually attended it at this point. Each sale in Orange County is reviewed and categorized as a qualified or a non-qualified sale, an arm's length transaction, as we discussed earlier. We review all the sales in the county to determine if they're qualified sales. And the purpose is to eliminate sales that are not indicative of a fair market transaction. 2 years of sales is included in our sales bank and used to shape the value for the revaluation. The neighborhood delineation is a process by which the appraisal team groups like properties, similar properties that are geographically similar or economically similar. The current delineation was created prior to the 2017 revaluation, and new neighborhoods have been added as new subdivisions have been built. An example of a neighborhood, you may have a subdivision that has homes in the north that were built in the 2010s, homes in the south that were built in the 1990s. They're all in the same subdivision, but there are two neighborhoods set up due to the age and sale prices differences between those two areas of properties. The best indicator of the value of a single family home is the sales comparison approach. Mass appraisal makes assumptions about some items for similar homes. Individual appeals provides opportunities to review specified properties and adjust those items as needed. For residential appraisals, it is a strong seller's market for residential properties. The demand for residential properties has been driven by federal government's continued actions to keep interest rates low, pandemic-related circumstances of stay-at-home orders, increased demand, and decreased inventory due to cessation of construction early in the pandemic. We did an informal survey with several counties that were conducting a revaluation this year as well. The average countywide growth for the survey of these counties is 17.88%, with a median of 16%. 15 counties responded to the survey. The range for those 15 counties is from 8% growth to 36% growth. Here you'll see this is a chart that it shows a countywide tax base, the percentage of growth from 2020 to 2021, also the percentage of growth from 2017 to 2021. And as you see for Carrboro, the percentage of growth is an estimated 14.6% from 2020 to 2021. And then from the last revaluation, it is 19%. These figures include estimated values for real property, personal property, business personal property, public utilities, and registered motor vehicles. So this is a complete tax base, the complete tax base, not just real property. Throughout the county, the tax base is $21,739,000,000. The overall percentage of growth from 2020 to 2021 is 12.6%. The overall percentage of growth for the most recent revaluation is 20.1%. Residential properties make up approximately 77% of this year's tax base, and commercial 23%. The residential overall growth is approximately 36%, and commercial overall growth is approximately 11%. For Carrboro, the tax base is I think I might have an extra number there. I'm sorry. I do. $2,806,444,019. The overall percentage of growth from 2020 to 2021 is 14.6%. The overall percentage of growth from 2017 is 19%. Residential properties represent approximately 73% of the tax base, and commercial 27%. In comparison, in 2017, the percentages were 75% for residential and 25% for commercial. The growth percentages include new growth and increase in value due to the revaluation. And we don't actually have a way to separate those amounts out. However, the annual average growth from 2017 to 2020 for Carrboro was 1.22%, and the growth specifically for between 2019 and 2020 was 1.5%. This is a table that shows the percentage of change for the properties in Carrboro. There were 347 properties that had a decrease in their value, which represents approximately 5% of the properties. 5,683 or 89% increased. There were no change to approximately 5%. And there were new and old parcels as properties were split into several properties, or where two properties or more were merged into a single property. The average value of homes based on jurisdiction. As you can see for Carrboro, the average value for a home is $393,657. These values include building, land, and other features such as garages or sheds. Townhomes and condominiums are excluded from these amounts. And one thing that would be important to remember is that the values of the buildings themselves, the land can vary. It can be a lot. It can be a larger acreage, 5 or 10 acres. So there are a lot of factors that would combine into this average amount. One of the ways that we verify that we have the correct information, the way that we measure our mass appraisal effectiveness is by calculating the median sales ratio. A sales ratio of less than 1.00 indicates that the tax assessment is lower than the property's recent sale price, and vice versa. The data spread above and below the median is indicated by the coefficient of dispersion, or COD, and less than 15 is a post-revaluation goal. And as you can see here for Carrboro, the sales ratio is 1.00 and the coefficient of dispersion is 7.4. These are standards taken from the International Association of Assessing Officers. Every quarter, the North Carolina Department of Revenue requires a sales ratio study to be conducted across the entire county. A sales ratio study is a comparison of our appraised value to the qualified sales that have occurred within the required time frame. We are required by law to be within 10 of 100% of the market value, meaning that the sales ratio has to be between 0.90 and 1.10 as a whole, not individually. This is a whole for the county. If we were outside this range, the Department of Revenue can require that we advance our revaluation date to complete it ahead of schedule. And that would be due to the fact that the sales are indicating values differently than what we have on the properties currently. Sales ratio are verified by category of property. The ratios indicates tax assessments represent about 100% of the current market values, and the coefficient of dispersion indicates the data spread. These are figures for the county, not for Carrboro specifically, but for the county. The overall sales ratio is 1.00 with a coefficient of dispersion of 7.7. Improved residential sales also have a sales ratio of 1.00 and a COD of 7. Commercial sales, our sales ratio is 1.00 and COD of 14.8. Vacant land has a sales ratio of 1.00 with a coefficient dispersion of 15.2. The remaining schedule for the revaluation. Our new values were available on our website as of March 22nd. Notices were mailed on March 24th. We did have a second mailing of additionally about 300 commercial properties that were mailed out on March 31st. The informal appeal period began when notices were received, and the deadline for informal appeals is April 30th. The formal appeal period begins Monday, May 3rd, when the Board of Equalization and Review convenes. And the formal appeal period ends on June 30th, when the Board of Equalization and Review adjourns. The revaluation notice includes information on the website to appeal online. Excuse me. We are very excited about this new online appeals tool. This allows the property owner to go online and put all their information in online without having to send anything in by paper or come into the office. They can actually scan documents and upload those documents into that web page and send that to our office electronically. So we're very excited about that. That's been very useful for us, and we hope it's going to be very convenient for the taxpayers. That website is, I'm going to leave that out. We've got that at the very end of the presentation, so you'll be able to see it there written out. In addition, we included an informal appeals form and the instructions for completing it with the revaluation notice. There's also information on how to navigate the two online tools we have to assist property owners in researching their property, the property record card search and the public compare. For more information on the appeals process, taxpayers may appeal their assessment through June 30th of 2021. The first stage is the informal appeals process. That's an in-house review with staff appraiser through April 30th. The second stage is the formal appeals process, and that is a hearing with the Orange County Board of Equalization and Review through June 30th. If the results of the Board of Equalization and Review appeal is not satisfactory to the taxpayer, they are able to appeal to the North Carolina Property Tax Commission. And if that is still not a satisfactory result, they are able to appeal to the courts, to the appeal courts. We have an appraiser who is available, who can assist taxpayers with assisting questions on the appeal form by phone, by virtual meeting, or a meeting in person. They can help appellants complete the appeal online. They can help them complete the actual paper copy as well. The county value real property by way of mass appraisal, which means that we may not have data that could be individual to a specific home. Information provided in an appeal can help us to determine if we have the property valued correctly. A property owner information helps to ensure that we have the best data and therefore the most accurate values. The potential impact of appeals. Currently, the county has received 1,062 informal appeals, and appraisers have reviewed approximately 73% of those appeals. We currently have 133 appeals for Carrboro. We are expecting more appeals than we had in 2017, possibly as many as 4,000 informal appeals and 1,000 formal appeals, with 200 appealing to the North Carolina Property Tax Commission. The reduction in value due to appeals is accounted for in the estimated tax base that you reviewed earlier. The estimation is based on historical percentage of reduction from prior revaluation years. You can review property characteristics of the real property search web page. As you can see, this is the address for the property characteristics. There you can check square footage, bath count, etc. Other things that you can find there. You can review the Compare web page here. You see the web page there to see nearby property sales as they compare to your property. You are also able to submit an appeal form with the revaluation notice or complete the appeals process online. And this is the web page for the online appeals process. For more information, this is our contact information, our phone number, our reval email address, and we are also available by live chat on our website. That's the end of the process here.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Ms. Freeman. Council members, questions for Ms. Freeman? Let's go to Damon, Sammy, then Susan.
Thanks, Lydia. And Nancy, Ms. Freeman, thank you so much for being here tonight and sharing this information with us. It's really good to have it before us. I did want to make sure, I think you mentioned at the beginning of your talk that you were going to share some additional information specific to the questions that have been raised about the North Side neighborhood and surrounding areas. But I do have some questions for afterward too. And also, I'm pretty sure we have at least one person signed up to speak on this topic, but I would like to ask my questions as soon as I can.
Okay. I would be happy to answer your questions and then give you the information that I have on the North Side.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I guess it doesn't matter what order they go in. It might actually be helpful to hear what you have to present about the North Side issue, because that might help shape some of the questions I have. Thanks.
Okay. All right. In response to Mr. Vaughn and other requests to review and change the property values in North Side and also Pine Knolls communities, I would like to make you all aware of what we are required to do by law, and also to give you an update of the progress that we've made on the issues. As you've just heard, the purpose of the revaluation is to equalize the tax base. We must follow the North Carolina general statutes in conducting the revaluation, and it is important to maintain the integrity of the revaluation process. We are required to maintain uniformity to be fair and equitable throughout the entire county. We are not able to make changes to a select area without making the same changes throughout the entire county. There have been questions about the value of land not being equitable in North Side. There are very few local vacant lots for sale in the area. So we rely on what's called a land value extraction method to be used. In this method, a sale is reviewed and the values of the buildings are determined. That value is deducted from this total sale, and the remainder of the sale is attributed to the land. This is a method that is taught and expected to be used by the North Carolina Department of Revenue. We have looked at making changes to the neighborhood delineation for the area and how we can make it more accurate to reflect the values. And our attempts to make the entire North Side neighborhood conservation district one neighborhood was not successful and did not provide results that would be favorable to the goal of the request. However, we are looking at a couple of other options at this point, based on information that we were able to receive from a meeting that we had this past Friday, where we might be able to change our neighborhoods, and we are reviewing that currently. There have been questions about using the income information from tenant-occupied properties, single-family properties, so that these properties can be valued differently based on the occupancy. For single-family residents, the best indicator of value is the sales comparison approach, which is what we've used in these situations. And we are not actually provided income information from these properties. And due to the fact that at any time a tenant-occupied property can be sold and converted back to a homeowner-occupied property and vice versa, the sales comparison approach is the best method for the value for these properties. It has been pointed out that we have not included nonprofit sales in our qualified sales, and by nature, these are not arm's length transactions and are not considered qualified sales. However, in the meeting that we had this past Friday, it was determined that there is some data, some market data that may be valuable for us to review in order to look to be able to qualify some of these nonprofit sales. And we are now waiting to get that information so that we can review those and see if that will help us to add some or more of the nonprofit sales to the qualified sales and therefore bring those values down. So we are working on a couple of different options and have a couple of different ways that we are looking at this to try to determine it. In the meantime, we are encouraging residents, which I know is at some point difficult, but we are encouraging residents to complete the appeals form, or even just send us a letter or an email letting us know that they would like to appeal their value of their property because it is too high. Provide us with contact information, and and also, what we would recommend is requesting that we do a site visit of the property, and that way our appraisers can contact the property owners and go out to the property itself and make sure that we have all the characteristics correct, that we don't need to make any changes to the property. And that will help us in the meantime while we are working on these other issues too, to determine if there are changes that we can make to make these properties more equitable and to help out with the situation. The meeting that we had this past Friday was led by County Commissioner Chair Renee Price. There were representatives from the tax office, and there were representatives from the Jackson Center and from community leaders. And we did discuss the issues. It was a very good meeting, and we've worked since then with Mr. Hudson Vaughn. I think our Deputy Assessor Chad Phillips has been working with him, providing him some information. And I've been in contact with Mr. George Barrett, who's the director there at the Jackson Center, to help him with questions that he had about how the appeals could be done. We had a good conversation about that today. So we are, working towards getting some resolutions from several different options. I know there was some concerns about whether we would be able to extend the informal appeals period past April 30th. And that is not something that we have the legal authority to do. Once the Board of Equalization and Review meets, which they are required to meet by the first Monday in May, which is this coming Monday, May 3rd, we no longer have the authority to make changes without their direction. So any appeals that are received by this Friday or prior to Monday, I guess is what I should say, will be handled as informal appeals. But then it will move into formal appeals at that point. The basic difference there is that rather than an appraiser from our office reviewing the information and working directly with the taxpayer to see if there are changes that need to be made, instead, we still do that same research. We would still reach out to the taxpayer to get information from them. We would still perform a site visit. But the information that we gather and what our evidence is and information that the taxpayer provides is heard by the 3-member Board of Equalization and Review, and they are the ones who make the decision on whether an adjustment is done to the property. So basically, there's still the same opportunity there. The appellant still has the opportunity to provide information, pictures of their lot to show that there's a stream running through it, or that they have a big drop off on one side, a topography issue, information about the property itself, where we have the square footage wrong, or where we're showing that they have a finished basement when they don't, or where they have a full second floor when they don't. So any information that the taxpayer provides is considered evidence that they would be presented to the Board of Equalization and Review. And there are times when we review the property, that we do a site visit, and we see that there are, oh yes, we see exactly what you're talking about. We do have this information incorrect. And as they are presenting information to the Board of Equalization and Review, our appraisers are also saying, this is what we found out. We concur with this situation. There are situations where that's not the case, where we do not see the same finding, that we believe that our value is correct, and we do provide that information. But that is done. The information is sent to our office. Our appraisers contact the taxpayer, the property owner. They set up an appointment so that the property can be reviewed and heard by the Board of Equalization and Review. The taxpayer can be and is encouraged to be at the hearing, but they do not have to be at the hearing. They can present information, and the Board of Equalization and Review reviews the information, whether the appellant chooses to come to the hearing or not. They review both sides of the information and make that decision. So there's not a requirement to be there, but taxpayers are encouraged to be there.
Thank you, Ms. Freeman. Damon, do you have any further questions? And also, to your point, I know we have at least one speaker. I know George is here. George Barrett is here to speak to us also.
Right. Yeah, I would love to hear from George, certainly. I think, Nancy, it's good to hear that you're looking into hopefully making some progress on the issue of properties that were sold, sales involving nonprofit organizations. That seems like an important thing to take another look at, especially in the neighborhoods where questions are being raised. I guess you mentioned that the average increase in values of Carrboro for residential properties was 19% since the last revaluation, which is a lot. And I think when we find ourselves in a situation of having a pretty substantial swing in property values, that even notwithstanding where there seem to be some real inequities systemically in how properties are being valued, like just on that percentage alone, an increase alone across the board, the average percentage increase, people are going to start asking questions, right? And this process is very difficult to understand, frankly, if you're not a tax assessor. And so I appreciate that you're doing your best to kind of explain some of the details to us. One of the questions I have, and I guess the sense that some of it is really driven by the statute, and some of the definitions and processes that you follow are driven by the statute. One of the questions I have about that is on the issue of kind of what seems to be central here is the issue of comparisons, comparable properties. And it feels like, for example, in the North Side neighborhood, Pine Knolls, et cetera, that there's some pretty fundamental questions about what properties are truly comparable to one another. And I'm wondering, is the work that your office does, according to does the statute define what comparable means? Or do you have some flexibility there to be really understanding the dynamics in a particular neighborhood? So for example, you mentioned you might have a subdivision where the northern half of the subdivision was built one year, the next half was built 25 years later. Those can be treated by your office as not in the same geographic neighborhood, essentially. But that might play out differently in some older neighborhoods that are being gentrified, for example, right? Where you have not such a clear delineation between a northern part of the neighborhood and a southern part, but it's all mixed in because people are doing infill building and newer homes are mixed in with older homes. And I'm just wondering, like, to what extent is this notion of comparability defined by the statute, and to what extent is it something you can actually take a closer look at?
Basically, it is what the process that we use. As defined by statute, there's nothing in the statute that specifically says it has to be that this is what a comparable property is. But what we do is take basic appraisal guidelines and appraisal functions in order to compare the properties. And as you were saying, you mentioned an older property versus a newer property. One thing that is looked at when we are looking at comps or comparing properties is you make adjustments for age, you make adjustments for size, you make adjustments for grade of construction, so that you are able to compare those better. And let me see.
Adjustments done at the level of, so for example, you mentioned that one of the keys to your approach for mass appraisal is to define these so-called neighborhoods, right?
Correct. Yes.
But that's different than doing kind of these one-off evaluations of how old one house is versus how old one other house is. I mean, I'm thinking about the neighborhood level, what you all are defining as neighborhood level comparisons, which seem to fall apart a little bit in these kind of more mixed or gentrified neighborhoods. That's, I guess I'm asking for sort of the higher level of comparison. In other words, how you're defining a neighborhood and how you're comparing properties within a single so-called neighborhood seems to not work as well in some spots as it does maybe in, for example, a subdivision that was all built at the same time and it still maintains its characteristics and so on. So that's kind of part of what I'm getting at about this issue of comparison. Would it raise a red flag for you as an assessor if there were, say, a couple properties on one street that had a certain value, that had an increase in value that was quite substantial, say 30%, and a couple of similar properties, in other words, similar sized homes, similar sized acreage on the lot, a block down the street that didn't have nearly as high an increase in the revaluation? Would that raise a question for you about the appropriateness of the revaluation?
Certainly it would, and that's some of the things that we're looking at. Is our neighborhood delineation correct? Do we need to change that? Is there a way to separate out sections? It's really more geographical than it is picking and choosing in the area. These are higher priced properties, these are lower priced properties. So, but that is one thing that we're looking at, is do we need to change the lines? Do we need to change where the neighborhoods lines are drawn and look at properties grouped separately or differently than we are looking at them now?
Okay.
The more information we have about the properties, the better that is for us, so that we are able to do it, more accurately. And we are hoping we are, like I said, we did look at putting all of Northside into the entire district into a single neighborhood, but that did not give us a result that was favorable. So we backed off of doing that. So we are hoping that learning more about where the tenant properties are, and maybe a boots on the ground type of approach, that we will be able to better delineate that area and look at that better.
Great. Well, I'm really glad that you're looking to do some more exploration there, and I hope you'll be very much in close communication with the folks we've heard from the Jackson Center and from the neighbors themselves. It's one of the things that strikes me about this process, and I have lots of questions about it, mainly because I'm not a tax assessor and I don't really understand it. But one thing that really strikes me about this and the way that you're presenting the process to us is that, as you said, you rely really on a mass appraisal method,
right,
to get a result. But then all of the solutions for addressing what seem to be systemic problems with that mass appraisal method, all of the available solutions are not mass solutions. They're individualized solutions where you rely on the ability, capacity, resources of an individual property owner to question that system. So there's a mass appraisal method that has mass inequities, but no mass opportunity for appeal. And I think that's where we're having a real issue here. I don't know what the solution is, but I really, really hope that you'll continue working on it for the benefit of these communities that are lower wealth communities that are being overvalued essentially compared to some of our higher wealth neighbors. So,
and I know that you're probably aware of this, as we are, that this is not something that is specific to Orange County, that this is an issue that is throughout many counties throughout the entire state and throughout the United States, I would imagine, as well. So, we are looking at what we are able to do within what the information that the law provides us, what we have to work within. And also, one of the things that I did not mention that I didn't have time to put in my notes is that we have already met with representatives from the UNC School of Government who are very interested in this issue. And we have set up a meeting in another week or two. I'm actually my daughter is getting married this weekend, so I'm not available for the rest of the week. But once I'm back in town and we're able to meet with some of the representatives again, and also meet with, I think at that point we should be meeting with Hudson Vaughn as well, so that we can work through some of these. And I think that looking at some of the bigger picture items and what the law says and are there things that need to be addressed that way, as far as the law is concerned? That's something that we want to investigate as well. But we do want to work within the confines of the law at this point to do what we can to make changes, to review the neighborhood delineation, to look to see if we can qualify any of those nonprofit sales, and to get all of the individual appeals that we can, to make sure that we've got proper property characteristics. And the mass appraisal does mean that we make some assumptions about like properties. And the way that we find out that they're not good assumptions is by these individual appeals, so that we are able to get good information on those properties and make those changes. And that's helpful for us for now and in the future. The more information we have that corrects what we are doing, the better our numbers will be and the better our evaluations will be from this point forward.
Great. Thanks
so as much as it seems arbitrary, it is the best method for us at this point to be able to get good information.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Damon. Okay, just FYI, y'all, we've got Sammy and then Susan, then Jackie, and we also have George in the waiting room. So let's go Sammy, then Susan, then Jackie. Yes.
Thank you, Mrs. Freeman, for your presentation, being here, and congratulations on your daughters getting married.
Thank you.
And also very grateful for the Jackson Center and many of the organizations you've mentioned, as they really bringing a lot of this to light. And we wouldn't really be knowing about much of this if it weren't for their great work. And thanks for working with them. And so, yeah, similar to Damon, thanks, Damon, for trying to understand and wrestle this complex process. You had mentioned that you have to compare similar properties and that you can do that either as they are geographically or economically similar. And as Damon pointed out, the issue here is we're talking about gentrified neighborhoods where you have a mix of different housing types that are economically different. And so my question is, instead of relying on geographic boundaries, why can't y'all rely on the economic differences of what these different houses are? For example, as the Jackson Center pointed out, many of these are student houses versus long-term neighbors living in and then those newer houses. Those student houses are also newer, and they even point out that some of the construction that happened was possible because of different rules, and that you don't even have those rules available for some of the properties that are being lumped in as potentially like those student stuffers. And so there's a real inequity happening. So my first question is, to what degree can y'all be more use a different, it sounds like the law allows for geographic versus economic, and so why can't y'all do more economic comparisons?
Part of what we look at is how the properties are categorized. The properties that we're looking at are all single-family home residences. Although some of these have been purchased by by investors, and they have been used as tenant properties where there are several students that are living in the properties. They still are qualified as a single-family residence, and we don't have a way specifically to show that they are different from the property that has the homeowner living in it. So the economic value of that property with tenants is not something we have information about. That sales, that rental data, that income data.
Is that a designation of single family something that is municipally defined or county or state defined? What I'm getting at is, if it is municipal, perhaps there's an opportunity for us to do some work in flagging for you.
That is basically something that when you were taking classes for appraisal for the North Carolina Department of Revenue, for the International Association of Assessing Officers, those are standards that you learn in those classes about appraising properties, that this is how it's classified. And that is what is used, that's the standard application of it, that it's a single family resident.
So this gets to another issue. We live in a time where there's a growing awareness about systemic and institutional inequities. And we're working on all these different fronts. And clearly, gentrification has been going on, as you correctly identify. It's happening nationally. It's this issue that we're wrestling with. But perhaps it's part of these guidelines that need to be looked at. And you mentioned basic appraisal guidelines that you use, and you just mentioned those again. And so part of my question is there any school or entity that is providing guidelines that recognize the way in which institutional and systemic racism exists in the way we do things, and if so, is that something you've explored? Is that something perhaps that could be done to get around relying on guidelines that are inherently problematic?
Can you say that one more time? I'm not sure I quite got it.
You mentioned that a lot of this stems from not the law necessarily, but guidelines that as you're trained, you learn how to do appraisals. So the question has to do with, to what degree is there an awareness within the industry of institutional and systemic inequities and different ways of making guidelines that can get around or at least be conscious of those inequities? Is that something that you're aware of exists in the industry that we maybe could be trained on how to do better?
I think that is probably something that is forthcoming. As a matter of fact, one of the student government officials that we met with this past week and discussed this issue with also teaches for the International Association of Assessing Officers and teaches a lot of these appraisal classes. And, he is concerned about these issues as well. So this is my assumption, but I would think that is something that is becoming a topic that is addressed or that needs to be addressed. It's been a couple of years since I've actually been to one of the appraisal classes that would have addressed that. But I would believe that it's probably something that's being looked at. The School of Government is aware of it, and I know that with him teaching classes that we probably the IAAO would also be aware of and be looking at.
Great, I'm glad to hear that. And locally, Orange County, Carrboro, Chapel Hill, we pride ourselves in being progressive and kind of being at the forefront and leaders and doing things that are progressive. And so I very much look forward to the tax office learning how to work within the law on it, but depending on guidelines that are more equitable. And it does sound like there's an opportunity because you mentioned that guidelines are what you use to determine single or family housing. So there's an opportunity there to really change that designation. It's not mandated by the state. It's a guideline that y'all are trained on. So all this brings me to, as a council, what are we to do? This is a county function, and yet we have citizens within our town that are affected by what happens at the county level. And I'd like to propose to our council members that we reflect some of what our comments are and some of what we've heard from the Jackson Center, for example, to the county and make a formal request that we really address some of these issues that are very significant, especially at this time when we're in a pandemic. The increase is so large in what some of these assessments are, that we press pause and really take the opportunity to align this kind of work along with all the other work that we do on combating institutional and systemic racism. So I would like for us to consider doing that as we do in so many other areas, both state and federal. We comment and advocate for our citizens.
Thank you, Sammy. Thanks for your comments. Let's hear from some other folks here. We got Susan and then Jackie, and then maybe we can go to George, y'all, and then come back to others.
Thank you so much for your presentation tonight, Ms. Friedman. You must feel like you're in the hot seat here, and we appreciate your patience with us. So I wanted to follow.
We do feel like that.
Yeah, and I wanted to follow up a little bit in terms of what Sammy said in terms of looking at appraisals through the racial lens, and I appreciate what you're doing in terms of reaching out to UNC School of Government to be helping with that. But I also want to bring that into the context of the appeals process. So I know that you track the number of appeals. I know you track to what extent the appeals are successful, the adjustment that's made on appeals. But what I'm concerned about a little bit is, do the appeals sometimes increase the disparity? In other words, are you also tracking appeals in terms of whether they're coming from people who are living in the lower priced homes versus higher priced homes? Who is submitting the appeals? I think would be sort of interesting information. And I was also curious in terms of the appeals. Do you track whether or not do you track appeals based on race and ethnicity?
We do not, simply because that's not information that we have about the properties. So that's not something that we do. It's not something that we consider when we're looking at the values So we don't do anything with demographics from that standpoint. That I never even thought about, consider that. But so we don't have that information. I think it would have to be, some voluntarily provided, because there are oftentimes, if we are working with a taxpayer or a property owner, that we don't see them and we don't talk to them, that it's strictly by mail or by email. So there would not be an opportunity for us to know that. So as far as whether it increases the disparity, from a standpoint of racial, we would not have that information. That's not something we would be able to track. And whether it does increase the disparity, I think that what I have been told is that these studies that have been done, that minorities may not choose to appeal because of the difficulty of the appeals process. Therefore, there would be less appeals from minorities. And I also have seen that in the event of a minority appealing, that they would not be successful in their appeal. I don't have information about the reason behind that. I've not studied the studies to see what that is. But I think that,
I'm sorry.
I think that is an assumption that we would make based on the studies and the information that I have seen.
Sorry, I did not mean to interrupt you. Ms. Freeman, when you mentioned that, were you referring specifically to Orange County in terms of lower rates of appeals among community members of color, or were you referring to nationwide studies?
Nationwide studies. I'm specifically the one that I think has been pointed out is the New York Times that was done. And there was also a blog done on that specific study by someone from the School of Government, the UNC School of Government. So that's where that information would come from, not specifically to Orange County, no.
And so I'll just add this in terms of the context of what Sammy was saying earlier, is both the appraisal and the appeals process, continuing to try to be looking at these through more of a racial lens. And, I think it would be especially meaningful here in our very progressive community. I wanted to talk to you to ask quickly about the homestead exemptions. And I know that there is a homestead exemption offered to community members who are over 65, folks with disabilities. I think they need to have an annual income of less than $31,500. I'm curious, do you track what, if you look at how many Orange County residents are eligible for these homestead exemptions, are you tracking what portion actually end up applying for these homestead exemptions? Is your guess that it's high or low?
Because we don't know income information for the property owners until it is provided for us, there would not be a way for us to track how many people might be eligible who have not applied. So I don't know that there's a way, that's not information that we have access to. That will be income information at the state or federal level that we don't have. And when someone applies, that's one of the things that they provide us is their income information. So I would not have a way to even guess as to how many people might qualify who don't already have it at all. I do know, if it's of interest, I think, I don't have the numbers right here in front of me, but I think I recall that we looked at Northside specifically, and that there are, I believe Chad might know this, I'm not sure if he's on here or not, but he may know the number because he was the one who got that for me. I believe there were 23 people in the neighborhood who actually had the homestead exemption.
Bringing a person named Chad over now, if that would be helpful.
Let's hope he remembers it.
Yeah, I think you're right with the 23.
Okay. And for Northside, I think it was 711 properties. Is that right, Chad? So
yeah, 711.
Okay. for that would be the 3 neighborhoods that we have that make up the majority of Northside. There's about 711 properties and 23 people who have applied and have been granted the homestead exemption.
Mhm. Okay. Final question for you. So I'm looking at my notice of revaluation, and it gives me the assessed value of our home for 2021, but it doesn't give the assessed value of our home last year or previous years. And so when I look at this, I don't know how much that increased, our house increased in terms of its assessed value. And if I have that information, that would help me know, oh boy, are my taxes going to go up a lot, going up a little, maybe not go up at all? So 2 questions. One, why is it that the previous assessment is not included on the form? And well, I guess that's the big question. And the fact that it's not, has there been talk about adding it in future forms?
Basically because it is a new valuation based on sales in the last approximately 2 years. And it is looking at what the value of the house is now, as opposed to what it was in 2017, which is what the last 4 years worth of bills have been based on. That's information that is on the tax bills that are sent out. So it can be accessed as well on our websites. That if you can go and look at that in a couple of different places on the tax bills that we have online, and also on the some of the GIS websites where you can see that value, and with the property record search as well. I think it shows up there.
Mm-hmm.
So it is available. In order to simplify that form, we choose to put just that value on there so that people are aware of what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes people will call and ask us what the old value was, but we don't do a 10% across the board. It's specific to the sales in the area where the property is located. So you would not see, oh yes, it was this amount last year, now it's going to be this amount this year throughout the entire county. So therefore we don't start with what it was, but give you what the current value is now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for all of your help tonight, Ms. Freeman. Enjoy your daughter's wedding.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Susan. Thank you for those questions. We'll go to Jackie, and after Jackie, we'll have George.
Thank you so much. And Nancy, thank you so much for coming here. And I know how hard it is to be the messenger of bad news, particularly when it's not of your making. So thank you so much. I'm very, very, very concerned about our homeowners, particularly our older homeowners in low wealth neighborhoods, regardless of whether their houses bought through nonprofits or that they've had themselves for 40, 50 years and they're living on retirement, and the taxes are going to push them out of their homes and lead to further gentrification. I'm also concerned about some of our formerly moderately priced neighborhoods. I think we've all been seeing how in what used to be neighborhoods where you could buy a home for, not that it's cheap, but $200,000, or that people are coming in and buying those homes for extraordinary amounts of money. And in some cases, buying the homes, tearing them down, and putting up homes that in some cases cost over $1 million. So we're seeing not only the decimation of our low wealth neighborhoods, but we're also seeing the decimation of our moderately priced homes, our moderate neighborhoods, where our low income neighborhoods are being pushed out by student housing, by multiple, by houses that aren't built for the kind of people, the demographic in terms of family size and age that live in these neighborhoods. They're being replaced. We're also seeing in our moderately priced neighborhoods that middle income people are being replaced by high wealth people. And so I'm very, very concerned about that. for a county that talks affordability every other breath. I'm disappointed that this is happening to both our low wealth and our moderate wealth families, and I'm disappointed in the leadership in the county for not doing more. This affordable taxes are an affordability issue. I'm also concerned if somebody, because we've seen in the past year, if not even just the past 6 months, skyrocketing cost of real estate. And we're seeing bidding wars and people coming in paying extraordinary amounts over the asking price, sometimes with cash. Because of digital nomads, people from areas that have much higher cost of housing, and yes, there are some, are selling their homes, moving here and working remotely. I personally know of several incidents where that's happened, and I know it's happening beyond my personal circle. My question is, if somebody had a house sell in their neighborhood within the past couple months for one of these extraordinary prices that we're seeing happening, and then they contested their tax rate, which was set a year ago, is there a chance that in contesting your new rate, when they come in and they look at recent sales around you, that you could find your taxes going up rather than down, because the assessors are simply there to look at the facts, and if the facts say, hey, you're right, we were wrong, we got to charge you more. Is that a possibility as well?
Because we do the evaluations every 4 years, and we do a revaluation date, like right now, it's January 1 of 2021. What we look at is a sales bank of the sales, qualified sales for about the last 2 years. And anything that's happened since that point would be considered for the next revaluation. So things that are selling now for more would not affect the value that is on the property as of January 1 of 2021. Did I answer that correctly? Is that what you asked?
How far back? So if I had a house sell in my neighborhood for twice what I paid for mine, how long ago would it have had to have sold in order for me to be safe?
It's what we look at, and we actually qualify the sales every day. I mean, all the sales all the time. But what we look at mostly is for revaluation, we start paying most attention to what happens 2 years prior to the date of the revaluation.
So if I question my revaluation and said, hey, come look at this, you would only be looking at sales from 2 years ago? You wouldn't be looking at sales from 2 months ago? Is that what you're saying?
We would be looking at it basically from January 1 of 2019 to December 31st of 2020.
So exactly. So somebody who contested it would be in danger of having the assessed value go up rather than down, because it's been within the past 6 months or a year that we have seen throughout our used to be moderately priced neighborhoods. We've seen extraordinarily high prices and bidding wars.
Those sales that have taken place have already been considered, that they've already been reviewed and qualified. That's what we do.
But what if it happened last month? And I say, so what if there was a sale in my neighborhood last month with one of these where it goes for much, much more than houses used to go? And so if I say, my property rate seems too high, but you could come in and say, hey, but this house sold last month in your neighborhood for even higher, therefore your rate can go up rather than going down.
We would not consider a sale that has happened after December 31st of 2020 for a January 1 of 2021 revaluation.
But what if it happened in December? This is what I'm saying, that we've seen in the past year the prices going up. So if there was a sale in December And now I'm contesting that sale in December would impact my reassessment, wouldn't it?
It already has. I mean, it was considered because we did look at it in December. We look at every sale we get from when the sales come through. Our appraisers review sales on a daily basis to look to see if they're qualified, and then it's put into our sales bank. So that sale that happened in December has already been considered when we were figuring these prices.
So, but still, we're seeing moderate income people being very negatively impacted by higher income people who are moving into their neighborhoods. Yes. And it's happening in our modestly priced neighborhoods, our moderately priced neighborhoods, as well as it is in our lower wealth neighborhoods. And I'm not saying that one's more important than the other. I'm saying they're both important, because we're going to end up being only a high income community where people pay a lot of taxes to provide a very limited amount of low income housing. That's my greatest fear. So thank you for being here, Nancy, and I hope the wedding's wonderful.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
All right, thanks, Jackie. Let's hear from George, and then I see Randy, and then Barbara. So I've been keep saying George, and so I know he's probably ready to speak. I've said him several times here, so he's coming over here now. Hello, good evening, George.
Good evening.
Feel free to start whenever you want to. It's soft 3 minutes, but go ahead.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Well, yes, thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me. For those of you who might not know me, my name is George Barrett, and I'm the executive director of the Marion Cheek Jackson Center for Saving and Making History. I'm also a new Carrboro resident as of 2 months ago. So hello, everyone. So, this conversation and a lot of the context and the issues and the problems and the things that we're talking about, I think we all know and have been having conversations about for the past several weeks. As well as I think someone said, with property tax, with something like this, it can get really easy to get caught into the weeds and all into the myriad of things. So I do want to just kind of bring us up and just kind of talk about the things that we do know. We do know that with these recent tax evaluations, that on average in Northside, Pine Hills, and Tin Top, neighbors saw their valuations go up by 53%. We know that residents, like a long-term resident whose family built their house in the 1940s, is seeing their property values go up by 112%. We know that another long-term resident who has been a domestic in Chapel Hill for 50 years and put 4 kids through college all by themselves, and who is still working today, is seeing their property taxes almost double. And we know that a 96-year-old who survived the Holocaust, who lives in Northside, has this property taxes rise 2.5 times since last year. We also know that in the recent valuations, the recent property tax valuations did not recognize the current limits of zoning and differentiate comps as a result. We know that property valuations did not differentiate significant differences in sales price by age and condition of homes. We know that property valuations and the land valued in Northside was incredibly high without taking into account comparable land sales that actually had happened in the neighborhood. That most of the land sales that have happened over the past several years have only been about $50,000 to $80,000. So why is some land valued in the $200,000, $300,000 range? And we know that the property valuation excluded most purchases of nonprofits that have made recently, which we also know that the majority of those purchases of houses by nonprofits, including the Northside Land Bank, are the older, more historic, smaller housing stock, which would be more accurate comparables to the long-term resident homes that are now seeing their property taxes increase significantly. And we also know that the current way that we have heard from the county of the way to correct this, or the best method to correct this, is appeals process, which is doing something on the individual level, not the systemic level. We have just talked about how we're seeing, not only from the New York Times article, but from what we know, from what I know and have heard in the neighborhood, that the appeals process is not as accessible to low income, especially Black and brown people. Not as many Black and brown people fill out the appeals process as before. I've also heard heard from many neighbors that they've had gone through the appeals process, that they've gone through an appeal, whether formal or informal, and that has not worked to actually change their property values. So we know that the result, what we're hearing from the county as the way to solve this and the way to actually have neighbors' property values go down is to not actually do this on the systems level, but to do it on the individual level. And we also know that the way and the process that this was done, the methods it was done, how it was done, wasn't equitable. So we know for a fact that one is this is not equity. And as I've said before, this is unacceptable. We also know that it's not just the Jackson Center and neighbors in Northside who want to see these like systemic changes happen. You know, we have other organizations like Empowerment and the End Up Chapel Hill NAACP who sent a letter to the county on Friday. We have already seen almost 200 individuals within the community sign on to that letter and petition. We have put out, the Jackson Center has put out social media, which has had hundreds of shares and hundreds of likes already on our Instagram and Facebook accounts. We have other organizations that are in solidarity with the neighborhood, we know, such as the Affordable Housing Coalition and the Home Preservation Coalition, who are talking as a coalition of creating letters to send to the county commissioners in solidarity with the neighborhood. And we know that people, even though it's not equitable, are mobilizing to support neighbors with filling appeals. We already have over 40 people who have been mobilized to assist neighbors with appeals and trying to get as many informal appeals in by Friday. And we know that that deadline should be extended. So I just, want to continue to say that, it is clear we know what the problem is. It is clear that this is a problem of equity. It is clear we have an opportunity to solve this problem and to not have it happen again and approach things from a systemic level, because what we are seeing is a symptom of systemic racism. And we know that this is possible to do and that we can do it. So I'm just here again to reiterate and encourage the council, the Carrboro Town Council, to talk to your peers who are elected officials in the county, as well as staff, and to push them to make these systemic changes and reevaluate the 2021 tax values in Black and Brown communities like Northside, Pine Knolls, and Tin Top, because I think the community has spoken very clearly and very loudly, and that's not just the Northside community, the larger community, and it's very clear that there's time to make a change. And it shouldn't be the burden of neighbors to go through an inequitable process of doing these appeals to already start making and do make these changes, one of them being the clear change of reducing and correcting the current property valuations in Northside, Pine Hills, and Tin Top. So that's all I have to say. I can stay on if anybody has any follow-up questions, but that's kind of all I came here to say tonight.
Thank you, George. That was really helpful and thoughtful. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to return, and if anyone has questions for George, we can bring him back over if we need to. But let's go ahead and go on then to we have Randy and then Barbara.
Actually, I think Barbara's hand was up before mine, so I'll yield to Barbara.
Okay.
So thank you, Randy. So Ms. Freeman, I know you've been on the hot seat tonight. It's been really hot. And I just appreciate you coming in with the information that you have and meeting with people and having these important conversations. So I did want to just start out by saying that. And my colleagues have just kind of touched on, pretty much everything I was thinking about. And George Barrett just kind of brought it home, about the realness, to us, about the community members that live in Northside and Tin Top and Pine Knolls. My husband actually grew up in Northside, and I know a lot of people in all of those neighborhoods. And so when I think about this, I mean, I know, that there's a process around everything, the statutes and, everything, but it's a cumbersome process. And I think, it's being put on the backs of those who shouldn't have to carry it. It's a systemic issue that should be addressed. And as Councilmember Slade said earlier in an email, we have to have the political will, to move, on an issue like this. We can't keep, saying, oh, it's the statute, it's the policy, we already know that. But just thinking about, the folks that are bearing the burden here. And that is really just bothersome to me. It hurts me in a way that I really can't explain, because it is falling on Black and Brown communities. And we just need a more equitable assessment process. I feel like the appeals process, I appreciate that there is one, but it is cumbersome. It's time consuming, and I just think, folks are not getting out of it what they think they should get out of it, or what they need to get out of it. So, they make the decision, not to do it. I do want to ask you about site specificity and location, as it relates to, I think, the appraisal process. And when you talk about site specificity and location and gathering that information, so I'm thinking that the information you're talking about that the appraiser gets, or that your office gets, you're counting on the folks that live in the homes, the residents, to provide most of that information, and that someone would actually go out under what circumstances, if you could clarify that.
Our policy is, as far as appeals go, for the formal appeals, that we would go out and conduct a field visit or site visit when there is a formal appeal, and oftentimes when there is an informal appeal as well, especially if a taxpayer or the property owner says, I would like for you to visit my property, then we would make a point to set a site visit up and go out to see the property.
So,
it does
and
not
that
happen.
I'm
It does not happen
sorry,
in
go
every
ahead.
case. Yeah, it doesn't happen in every case in the informal appeals process, but it does in the formal appeals process.
Okay, so last question. So, and I'm just asking you, and you may not even have an answer, but this is a pressing question for me. So, how is the current appeal process helpful, if at all, as it relates to the systemic inequities that you have been hearing about that exist and have existed? And how do you feel like this process could be improved? Because I'm really looking for some low-hanging fruit here, and I'm not seeing any. What I'm seeing is, like I said, a cumbersome process, for some folks, that just is creating an even greater burden on them. So was just trying to see what you thought about that.
As far as how the appeals process helps us, it does give us the opportunity to look beyond the mass appraisal techniques that we use, and to identify anything that is not correct made by that assumption, so that we can make those corrections. And I think that what we are doing in this case is working on the individual appeal process, which is what basically the law provides for us to do, but also with the information that we hope to be getting from Mr. Vaughn and from the Jackson Center, so that we can also look to see if there's something that we can do on a systemic level to make adjustments to, as far as those non-qualified sales, that we are hoping that the market analysis will allow us to qualify them, and that would make some difference in the values there. That would be kind of a good starting point. I think that because the law specifies that the way to make a change is to have an appeal, and I know that's not a great thing. I know that's not what you want to hear, but that's what's in the process. That's what we are given, and that's how we have to work. And that may be something that, in the course of looking at this, that needs to be reviewed as well. Is that something that when we speak with the School of Government representatives, that we'll bring that to their attention, that this seems to be an issue, that there should be a better way to do that than the individual appeals. Is there a better way to handle it? I'm not sure I really gave you a good answer, but does that kind of answer, does that help a little bit?
Yeah. So
Okay.
You gave me the best answer that you have tonight, that, attention has been called to it, and, it's a work in progress, and that there are conversations, and folks are doing what they can at this point. So I appreciate you being here. Happy wedding.
Thank you.
And thanks for all your help
Thank
tonight.
you.
Mhm.
Thanks, Barbara. All right, let's go on to Randy.
Hi, Nancy.
How are you?
I'm doing. Yeah, thank you for putting up with all this. I'm really glad you're able to come. I really appreciate the slides. I think anybody who works in a tax office, oh, God bless you all, because who likes their tax appraiser? It's very tough role. And like with everyone else, I want to wish you and your daughter and your family the best on the wedding. That is some of the most hopeful news I've had today, that there's a wedding about to happen. So I thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that you all are working with UNC School of Government. I think this is going to take a real cutting edge view. I think we're at a very different moment in time. I think all of us recognize that. The problem is that the way government moves is not moving as fast as we're going to need it to move, and the tax assessment is going to be part of that. I'm really glad you all recognize that. That doesn't make the immediate situation any better, but it does give me a sense of if folks knew, and this just goes to the communication, if folks in the county knew that you were working with UNC, that you're pressing the leading edge on these questions and understanding that the differentiation in the comps and some of the other things that you described are being reviewed, that there is concern not only because equity and disparity are at the forefront, but also because of the inflation that is occurring throughout the housing market. So I really appreciate that. I really want to underscore what Damon and Jackie and Barbara, the colleagues, have said about gentrification. That was my number one concern, because in Carrboro, we have some housing stock that goes back 100 years, and we have neighborhoods that have in the last 40 years, most rapidly in the last 20, gentrified at an unprecedented rate. And so you have infill, that what I call spot lots in neighborhoods that are offsetting the valuations to a very high degree. And I think Jackie pointed out, some neighborhoods on one half of the block, you have a home that was purchased at a market rate, knocked down, rebuilt, and now you have $1 million home. And we see that throughout town. And so, to have the data start to reflect more specifically what is in the individual neighborhoods, where the neighborhoods are being identified for gentrification, and where nonprofits have housing, where are the habitat homes, where are the student or I should say leased single family homes. And I know you can get this information. The county could be targeting this, because here in Carrboro, with our stormwater work, we're looking at the very same kinds of issues. It's not identical, but we're trying to figure out impervious surface by lots. And Jackie's shaking her head because she knows it's complicated, but we're in this moment where we need to genuinely assess and not charge everyone in the neighborhood, appraise them in the same way, because it isn't equitable. George put it beautifully. I think when you look at some of the homes that were built in the 30s and the 40s, and down the block, the there are renovations and things being done in homes that are being redeveloped, and you look back and you say, well, they should be equitable. They're not. Now, that brings me to two other points. And one is that you talked about a 2-year look back. And so my question is, with the escalation of sales now and the prices, and my neighborhood sells so fast, it's ridiculous. And my neighborhood used to have what would be considered a fairly mixed range of dwellings in terms of sizes, square foot. So if that's the case, and if we fast forward, the next valuation would be 2025, correct?
Mhm.
So 2025 would be looking back at 2023, and we're looking at where the inflation is now. It's going to be astronomical. So the reason I'm saying this is because if the tax office and the county commissioners start to look at what's ahead within only 5 years and how that is going to affect not only community, but neighborhoods and the municipalities, it may be something that we can push to have some other way to address this issue than what has been, because it's shifting very quickly, and it's detrimental across the board, because as Jackie says, we're going to find ourselves almost in a gated community because people will not be able to afford to live here. Lastly, I just want, and I thank you for your abundance of patience. Sammy made a motion. I'd like to follow up on that. Sammy, where are you? I don't see you. But
I'm here.
Oh, good. So Sammy made a motion because this is a question of systemic level response, and I think community will get behind that. And Sammy, I believe you said something about a letter to commissioners, just basically raising this point. And I would just say, looking at not only valuation now and the fact that it's harming individuals, and I really support creating a mass response. But in addition to that, looking at what's coming down the road in the very short window of 5 years. So Sammy, if you'd restate your motion, I'm going to second it.
Sure, thanks, Randy. So the motion is that we send a letter to the county commissioners, as they do have discretion within the bounds of state law in in instructing their tax assessors to do things differently than their guidelines. And so I would like for them to ask their tax assessors to do things differently to account for institutional systemic inequities that as we are as evidenced in Northside and in some of these other neighborhoods. But along with that, I would like to reiterate some of the asks that Hudson included, which is to extend the appeals process by 30 to 60 days. Please accept an initial class action appeal on behalf of all Northside residents so that they can appeal and work out any details specific to their property. Please reduce the land value appraisals to match the per acre rates of other nearby neighborhoods. And please instruct assessors to determine how their formulas resulted in these gross inequities and determine corrections so that this doesn't happen again. One last one that I may include, depending on what the answer is from Mrs. Friedman, is by statute, it's every 4 years. And I guess we're at the 4-year point now. Is that what we're doing? Is that 2021 is the fourth year?
2021 is the 4th year. What the statute says is that it must occur every 8 years or less. And most counties or less. Most counties choose to use the 4-year period. Okay. And Orange County has generally stuck with the 4-year revaluation. As far as I'm aware, having been with the county for many years, for over 20, The only time I've known it to be to be more than 4 is from 2009 to 2017, where there was an 8-year period there.
Thank you. So given that information, I would like to also include a request for county commissioners to postpone until we addressed some of all these issues, our assessment this year, especially given the fact that we are currently coming out of a pandemic and people are going to be having to pay their rents and mortgages at a time when a lot of those have been postponed.
Okay, all right. So we have a motion by Sammy. We have a second by Randy. I want to just pop in with a few very quick comments before we vote on that. I echo, all the comments y'all have said. They've been wonderful. Appreciate all the information from George. The only thing I wanted to add too was I keep hearing going to the school of government, which I think is great in terms of them looking at this issue. But I also think this is something we need to talk to our legislative delegation about. It's something that needs to be changed. There needs to be some change in the statutory authority for this also. So let's keep that on the back burner also for conversations we're having, not just with our fellow local electeds, but also our statewide legislators as well. So, okay. So I think that's been a good conversation. I'd like to go ahead and take a vote on this motion. And then afterward, I want to talk about how we're going to execute it. So, so let's go ahead and take the vote on the motion Sammy made that Randy seconded. All in favor, say aye. Randy?
Aye.
Me, aye. Jackie?
Aye.
Damon?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Sammy?
Aye.
And then Barbara?
Definitely aye.
Aye. Okay. So this letter from the council seems like it has to be time is of the essence because of the deadline this week and just kind of, some asks we have in it. And so I'd like to ask either Mr. Manager or Kathy, is there, or council members, is there someone who could put together this letter tomorrow? I know I cannot. I'm snowed under the next couple of days with grading. It sounds like there's a lot of information. Randy?
Yeah, I was just going to say that if we take the request from George and from Hudson,
okay, yeah, I hear you. And who does this? My question, Damon, yes.
So Sammy made a very specific motion that was approved unanimously by the council. And if I would be happy if Kathy can get me the recording of Sammy's motion to be the one to translate that into a written form. But I do think it's, Sammy's points were very specific, and I don't think we want to be wandering around too much.
Right. No, I think that's great. So you can listen to the recording and maybe Sammy even has the notes he read them off of. I don't know, but Damon, you hear what I'm saying? That
so as soon as Kathy can provide me with an audio or video recording of what Sammy just said a moment ago, listing the points that would be included, I'm happy to transcribe that.
Okay. All right. Awesome. And so
Thanks,
we are sending a letter, and so we are. We're all aware. Then Damon will compose that letter to come from us. And Damon, after you do it, will you just give it a quick view by everyone before we send it off? We all recognize it needs to get out soon, and it's going to say exactly what Sammy said.
I absolutely will. And now that I'm thinking about it, now that we are broadcasting these Zoom things through the town's YouTube channel, I might even be able to just go to the YouTube channel as soon as it's done uploading. So I won't have to wait the usual amount of time. So I'll do it as soon as the YouTube thing is ready.
Awesome. Thank you, Damon. Yeah, I think you're right about that. So very good. Okay. So I think we're finished with this item then.
I had a question. Just really quick. I'm sorry, Lydia. Just real quick.
Sure.
So we're talking about a matter of days, right?
Well, that deadline is coming up. Yeah.
Friday.
Yep.
Okay.
The internal appeal, and then also the idea of trying to delay the tax valuation. So.
Okay. All right. So in the next day or two. Okay.
Yeah.
I will do this as soon as, tomorrow. I will do it tomorrow.
Thank you, Damon.
Thanks, Damon. All right. And so just in closing out this item, I just want to say again, Nancy, thank you for giving us your time this evening. You've been really helpful and lots of good information. And we really appreciate you and the job you do. So.
Thank you. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. And one more thing that I will say, and I will find the statutes and send those to Catherine. I think I have her address, if that's okay. Information about when the revaluation can be postponed. because I can't find the statute. I was looking while y'all were talking. At this point, statutorily, I don't think that there's an opportunity to do that, but I will find the statute and send that. And also, I think I had covered this in the presentation, but the fact that the informal appeal period cannot be extended, but that the formal appeal period could be extended. I don't think I made that clear, but that there is still the opportunity to appeal, but that to appeal informally will end as of Monday, when the Board of Equalization is required to convene. So I'll send that statute as well, so you'll have it for reference.
Thank you. I know, I appreciate that. And I think we understood that. We still want to send this letter. So thank you very much. So I appreciate it. All right, council members, our last item, we're going to postpone it till next week because we have a closed session. So we're going to postpone the manufactured home communities item until next Tuesday. And then I need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Moved by Sammy, second by Susan. I saw her hand up. All in favor, say aye. Randy?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
Me? Aye. Susan?
Aye.
Damon?
Aye.
Barbara? And Sammy?
Aye.
Okay, but Barbara didn't have her microphone on, but she raised her hand, so. Okay, so we'll wait till, make sure